This week we're looking at the topic of justice, and it's a tricky one, and I wanted somebody who had a particular insight into it. So I'm going to speak to Paul Newbould, and Paul is going to tell us a little bit about himself and what he does.
Hi, I'm Paul Newbould. I've lived 4.5 years now in Manchester, and I'm a community outreach worker, which also includes work in prisons.
Paul, it is an absolute privilege to be talking to you today. Thank you so much for taking the time for us. So let's jump straight in. How would you describe your work in prisons?
There's various jobs. I've had the privilege of leading services once a month in prison, Christian services in the chapel.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the privilege of leading Bible studies in the chapel building and with small groups, 6, 8, 10, coming to them. Peacemaker groups, which is sort of anger management and conflict resolution groups. And that would be with guys who haven't professed any kind of faith at all. But it's done very much from a Christian point of view. And one-to-one. So I go onto the wings, talk to the guys, and then I'm also involved occasionally with resettlement work. So, what happens when they come out and how they get housing, how they get work, and just keeping them on the straight and narrow where I can.
So, obviously, in that job, it sounds like you deal with a wide variety of personalities. And I guess the thing I'm particularly curious about is what's it like dealing with offenders who, for whatever reason, struggle to acknowledge their own guilt and still don't seem to show much remorse for things they've done.
Well, I don't take that as an issue because I try to look past the stuff that isn't working right in people and look for the good stuff. So the biggest challenge, though, comes when you do something like forgiveness, which features on the Peacemakers conflict resolution, anger management course that we do, where guys say, yeah, I can just about forgive, I can just about give, but not in that particular situation, where guys just have a zone. It might be they cannot accept that paedophiles can in any way be right or have any legitimacy on planet Earth. So their anger and their capacity for forgiveness is very, very hard for guys in prison in that area, or people who have caused violence within their family. So it's when you get talking about forgiveness, that's when it gets really hard, and I have to draw on all my skills to listen to these guys and find out where they're coming from. And probably it's up the road, to be able to talk through issues of forgiveness in that respect.
It sounds like you just listen to people in the first instance and go from there.
Yeah, the walking alongside and the listening, those would be the two big factors, because you don't go in there trying to fix them because you can't. The only way that I can influence people genuinely is by seeking to understand them, and that comes through listening, that comes through spending time, that comes through journeying with them. And quite often, through not understanding, I can cause more problems.
So what do you think needs changing most in the prison system?
Well, the prison populations are going up all the time, and the mental health of prisoners and the educational level of these offenders and the issues that they face in life. I'm not a big softie. I don't think that, I think consequences are really important. They need to learn to face the consequences. But where there's a choice not to put someone in prison, I think that should be used more often than it is. But I do think that if the government were able to invest more in rehabilitation, in mental health, and supporting prisoners, they'd save themselves a lot of money.
We'd get a lower recidivism rate.
Absolutely. And that's the whole reason I came into prison to work in the first place. I'd had no interest in justice or offenders or the extreme end of crime or anything like that at all. But it was when I watched a documentary on television that startled me so much that started a chain reaction, and I wanted to know more, and I felt that was God speaking to me.
Which links me to my next question. Why do you do what you do?
I've never been a sort of angry young man, politically challenged in that way. I think that people should be politically engaged, and I've never had that sort of justice thing deep bubbling within me. But I do have a heart for people, and some of these guys who wanted to break that cycle, they wanted to, but needed just that little bit of help, that little bit of journeying alongside. Um, then perhaps that's something that I could do with a little bit of experience I've got on top of teaching 5-year-olds. And there isn't any similarity there, no pun intended. I just felt that if these guys had someone to journey with them, trust them, give them an opportunity to talk through what was going on in their lives, and in particular, open their hearts to the possibility of God helping them as well. That was important for me. But it was, not to change, not to turn them into Christians necessarily. That's something God does, and that's something people do when they open their hearts and make that choice. But to just be able to spend time with them and break that cycle.
Well, listen, Paul, thank you so much for taking your time. It feels like a real insight, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate hearing from you on this one.
It's my pleasure.